Hi, and welcome to Gatecrashers. Today's episode is actually an interview with Emmy award-winning executive producer Paul Martin, who has worked on other titles such as Make or Break on Apple TV Plus and Formula One Drive to Survive. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Dan, I saw the name of the episode, and it's an interview about Onside Major League Soccer. Yeah, I've never talked about soccer on here before. I'm not really a sports person, if you haven't figured that out now after years of my nerd podcast. But I do love stories. So if you know me, you know I love the Eagles. I love the underdog story. I love all of that kind of narrative, because in the interview you hear me say sports can be done in a vacuum. It's something that you can watch and you never really need to know what's going on outside the game. Like, you don't need to know the stories of all the players. You don't need to know about the team. You don't need to know about the community. But Onside gives you all of that for Major League Soccer. And I didn't think I was going to walk away wanting to go to an actual soccer game. I'm going to try to go see the Philly Union soon, because there is an episode about a player on there who is like destined to be huge. And I think those stories of rivalries and teams rebuilding and superstars, I just think they're so interesting. And I think it gives a lot to sports for people who don't typically watch them, like me. They're just great stories. There's so much potential to talk about all of this stuff, which Paul Martin is known for. So it was really nice to get to talk to him about that and get to hear what he's experienced in his work and telling these stories. So enjoy the interview. It is available now on Apple TV Plus. Honestly, I've been getting into Apple TV a lot recently. I've been watching Shrinking, which is just a wild show. But Onside is on there now, and I really do suggest checking out an episode or two, especially if you're not a sports fan. It'll kind of give you a look into a world you never got to see before, and I think that's what this show is all about. So I was really excited to kind of have those gates kicked in for me by this show. So enjoy our interview with Emmy award-winning executive producer Paul Martin. Sports and big athletic events are something that can be viewed almost in a vacuum, in which I mean you can watch it without knowing the stories about all the people, players, and teams and communities that are built around these things. But a lot of your work has focused in on those stories. What do you find appealing about the stories of the people behind the games and things of those natures?
I think what's appealing is that, I think everyone's perception of sport is really formed by what they see in that 90-minute game or that 2-hour race or whatever it is. And, even to the point, where people are like, well, I really like that driver, or I really like that, or I don't like that player, I don't, because why? Well, they missed that chance, or they dropped that catch, or they crashed that car, whatever it is. And, there's so much more to it there's so much more that happens in these people's lives before they're even set foot on those, where they come from, the things they deal with every day. And I genuinely just enjoy, I love it when people come to me and they say, I really didn't like that person, or I really didn't think I would like that person. And you made me care, and and then the next time I saw them play, I really rooted for them. Because I think, I think that's great. It's a great position to be in, and it's great to be able to do that and change people's perception of someone that they think they know or they think they understand. And I think that's kind of unique to kind of sport, is that you have that kind of main event that people consume, but very often they don't get the opportunity to see the story behind, how they got there or how they were feeling on that particular day. And I think, that's what we try to do with these shows, and it's what we've tried to do with kind of Onside.
Yeah. And Onside, to be fairly transparent, I'm not a huge sports guy other than my Philly teams, just because of the stories and the narratives that are formed around these things. But after watching this, I was like, damn, I got to go see a Union game. Like, this is so much more than I imagined.
And listen, you got to go and see Cavan. You could have the next global superstar.
Yeah.
And I think he's a special kid and he's a special talent. And I think it's that. I think, Philly being such a huge sports town, and congratulations on the Super Bowl, by the way.
Thank you. Big one.
So, Philly's such a huge sports town, but they probably don't know that, hey, we might have the next great global soccer star on our doorstep as one of us, growing up as part of, kind of Philly and from a very Philly family. And, it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is so interesting to see like that, because we hear about all the other stars on the Eagles and the Phillies and things, but there's someone being homegrown who could be the next like Beckham or people like that. That is a internationally known name. Now, with your other work being in other verticals like driving, surfing, all those different things, did you find anything different about the personalities you were working with in soccer versus the other avenues?
Yeah, listen, I think elite sports people share a lot of kind of similarities. They're absolutely laser focused. They're absolutely dedicated. The really great ones are incredibly selfish. You learn that because how could you not be? How could you? And I say that in a positive way. I don't say that in a negative way. But I think what you learn is that every sport is slightly kind of nuanced and needs a different approach. The mentality that you need to strap yourself into a Formula One car and drive that for 2 hours is a different skill set to walking on a tennis court or hitting a golf ball, at the US Open or the Masters, or playing for an elite kind of soccer team. And I think that you start when you start to inhabit those spaces, you start to pick up on those nuances, and soccer's a huge team game, and the interactions between the players and the cliques that are formed and the relationships between coaches and players really have a direct impact on how teams perform and how people get along. Whereas something like tennis is, you're out there on your own for it could even be 4 hours, and you're just in your own head, and that's a different kind of skill set that you need in tennis than you need in kind of soccer. So yeah, I think there's definitely shared stuff, but there's a lot of differences as well.
Yeah, and it is cool that you bring up the tennis and then versus something like soccer, which is a heavy team sport. For you as a storyteller, are you more interested in these interconnected stories with a team versus just like an individual person, or do you find strengths in both?
I think with the team stuff, you've just got more opportunity. There's just more interaction. You've got more characters to play with. I think when you're doing about the individuals, you've really got to find a way to get into that person's head, because tennis as a great example. Tennis is the difference between the top 10 players in the world is kind of what's in there, honestly, and you see it, you really see it. But how do you get in that, and how do you get tennis players to articulate that is difficult. We're very fortunate in Formula One, where in Drive to Survive, we have the driver radio where you hear them talking to their engineer. So in that moment where they're overtaking someone, you really get to hear what's going on in their head. But in tennis, you never can quite figure out what's really, really going on. So that's a unique challenge, and I think, and again, it's what's unique about that sport. Tennis is all about how they manage their own head versus how they manage the relationship between the other players or the person that they're up against. So yeah, it's an interesting, and it definitely affects, how you try and produce those shows.
And with this project, did you walk away with any different perspectives about soccer/football in general? Like, did you have a different appreciation or something you're more focused on now that you may have not been before? I mean,
I've been a huge soccer fan, from when I was young, and I've been around, I played soccer, not professionally, but I played at quite a good standard. I had a bunch of friends that went on to become professional players. I was a soccer journalist for a little bit. So I've been around the world of soccer probably more than any other sport. And I've always had an appreciation of, how good you have to be to get to that level. I mean, I was a kid that I probably could not have played any more soccer as a kid growing up. It's like any spare moment, I was out there and I was quite good. But the difference between me and those guys is a chasm. And so I've always had an appreciation, and I don't think people understand how good you have to be to get to that level. And I think what was great about this is that, look, I think certain soccer fans maybe look down their nose at the MLS a little bit because it's American, it's called soccer rather than football, all that kind of nonsense. And I think hopefully people will see the show and have an appreciation about how good those players are in the MLS, because they're 100 times better than I ever was, and I think it's that. I think it's looking at that and understanding how good these guys really are.
I love that. Well, Paul, thank you for your time. I'm very excited for people to see this because, before this, I never would have really thought about going to a football soccer game. But now I'm like, this rocks. Like, I love learning, and the club mentality. All of it's so interesting.
Yeah, I think Union have appointed a new coach this year. I think they're feeling good about the season ahead. So I think it could be a good year to.
Yeah, it might be a good year to get on. Well, thank you, Paul. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Great.
The